Welcome to Red Ice Creations Radio. This is Henrik Palmgren. Thank you for tuning in. Good to have you with us. We are coming to you from the west coast of Sweden, up in Scandinavia. You can find us 24/7 from around the world, where internet is accessible through our website, redicecreations.com. That's REDICE creations.com. Glad to have you here today. We have Marcus Allen with us on the line. He is the UK publisher of Nexus magazine. Marcus is also one of the speakers that will be on the Beyond Knowledge conference that we have mentioned during our two previous programs with Ralph Ellis and Jerry E. Smith. I know that Marcus will be talking about the moon landings on the conference, the alleged moon landings, and we might touch upon that a little bit later here today as well. And Marcus is into a lot of different subjects, like the technology of ancient Egypt, Immanuel Velikovsky, to crop circles, 9/11, and the crystal skulls. Fascinating topics, all of them, and these are some of the areas that we'll be going into here today with Marcus. The website that you can check out in regards to Nexus Magazine is simply www.nexusmagazine.com. That, by the way, got a very nice facelift a while back, so the website looks new and fresh. Very, very good to see that. So again, the website is nexusmagazine.com. So with that, let's say welcome to our guest here. Thank you for coming on the program, Marcus. Nice to have you with us.
It's a pleasure, Henrik, and thank you very much for inviting me. I look forward to our discussion.
Definitely, me too. It's great to have you here, as I said, and what I like to do is to start off and talk a little bit about yourself and maybe the background that you have in regards to the Nexus magazine. This, of course, is a Australian publication, I guess, from the beginning. Duncan Rhodes down in Australia started this up. But how did you get involved in this project or in this magazine, Marcus?
Well, my involvement actually dates back to 1994. I was shown a copy of Nexus magazine by some friends down in Glastonbury, and I thought, oh, this looks an interesting magazine. I think I'll get hold of a copy, and I found that they weren't available in England. If I wanted to have a copy of Nexus at that time, I had to subscribe to the Australian office, and I thought, no, if I'm interested in Nexus, there must be other people in Britain who are interested in Nexus. So I got in touch with the editor, with Duncan Rhodes out in Australia, and said, look, I'd like to distribute Nexus in the UK. So he said, well, that sounds good. I'm interested in doing that as well. Come out and we'll have a chat. So, as you do, I went out to Australia. Actually, it was my 25th wedding anniversary as well, so it was a double trip.
Right.
And we were able to get out there, and I met up with Duncan, and we got on very well. And he said, well, give it a go. See how you get on. We do have subscribers in Britain, but not very many. I think there were about 30 subscribers at that time. And so I came back to England with some copies of Nexus and a promise that I would have the distribution rights to Nexus for the UK and for Europe. And I set about trying to interest people in Nexus, in reading it, and to do that, I decided that the best way was to attend various conferences and conventions that would attract people who might well have an interest in the subject matter of Nexus. So the first conference I attended was the Fortean Times Unconvention in 1994, and a lot of people expressed considerable interest in the magazine. They said, oh, this is really interesting. I'd like to subscribe. So I found that there were people interested. And so I continued that way, and I thought, well, I need to get some shops to sell Nexus now. So I put some copies in the back of the car, and I drove around as many shops as I thought would be interested and said, well, would you like to sell the magazine? They said, we'll give it a go. And that's how it started. This was, 14 years ago.
Right.
And it gradually built up, and I thought, well, I don't know how it's going to work, so let's just give it 6 months and see what happens. And 6 months went by, and the subscriptions increased significantly. There were now about 200-300 subscribers. So I thought, oh, there's a demand for this information. There's a demand for Nexus in the UK. the next step is obviously to get distribution through newsstands and through general bookstores at airports and railway stations and high streets, and hopefully some distribution in Europe as well. So I made contact with one of the main magazine distributors in Britain, which is Seymour Magazine Distribution, and they took us on, and their method of doing it is much as you would expect. They contact all the major distributors like W.H. Smith and Martins and Gibbs. These are the main news agents in Britain.
Mm-hmm.
And they took samples and put them on sale, and people bought them, which is what we wanted.
Now, were there any kind of, questions, no, this is very fringe material, we have nothing to do with this, or did they just, okay, sounds good, we'll take it? What happened?
Yep. People like W.H. Smith, who are the main news agents in Britain, they are business people. If they have a product that will sell on their shelves, they will take it.
Right.
Now, obviously, one has to be a little bit careful. You can't publish libelous or slanderous material. You can't say things which are incorrect just for the sake of saying them, and we are particularly careful that we don't cause offence in that way.
Mm-hmm.
But if we criticise companies or organisations, then we'll do that. But we can always back it up with the evidence required.
Right.
And we've been distributed by W.H. Smith and major news agents like Borders, who have got a major presence in Britain at the moment, for about 12 years. And we've had no problems at all. In fact, from our initial 30 subscribers who were subscribing to Nexus before I was involved, we now sell around 12,000 copies per issue.
There we go. That's very good.
So it's a successful magazine. There is a demand for the information in Nexus.
Mm.
And if anybody is unfamiliar with Nexus, as Henrik said, please try our website. You'll find some sample articles available for you to read on it. Not all of them. And then your next step will be to contact the UK office and get a subscription.
Right. So, I mean, how when the web became very popular, so to speak, what happened then? Did the subscriptions go down because many people could find the same type of information on the web, or did it increase? What happened when that came about?
Well, we find that with the information available on the web, this has actually increased our sales, because not everybody is online. Not everybody likes to use computers in that sort of detailed way to search out information.
Right.
To have it available, or to have the sort of information that they are interested in reading about contained in one magazine, is quite often the way a lot of people like to receive their information. I mean, it's as simple as saying that you can always take a magazine into the bath and read it in the bath.
Right.
You can't take a computer into your bath. It's not quite so. You drop the computer in the bath, you've got a wrecked computer. You drop the magazine in the bath, you've got a wet magazine.
Right,
so
right,
that's
right.
it.
That's
so many
great.
people we find are much more willing to acquire their information in this way. They use Nexus as a starting point
Mm-hmm.
for research into a subject which may have a particular interest for them.
Right.
Now, I should say that Nexus has no political, religious, or philosophical connections at all. It's a totally independent magazine.
Mm.
In fact, we have carried articles in the past which have been critical of certain areas of religion,
Right.
not least of which is Christianity. We've researched that in considerable detail, or published the research of other people in considerable detail.
Right.
We've looked into Buddhism, specifically Tibetan Buddhism, and published a fairly critical article on that. If one knows the history of Buddhism, specifically in Tibet, which of course is rather in the news these days,
Mm.
it is surprising what information can be obtained. And now these are done by specialist researchers, and that is the purpose of Nexus, is really to publish the work of specialist researchers in subjects which wouldn't normally get as broad an airing as their work appears to imply. Nexus has a very broad circulation.
Mm-hmm.
We publish in Nexus really 6 major subjects. We look behind the news in what goes on, and we published a lot of articles about the Bilderberg organization, for instance.
Right.
We publish articles on health, alternative health, looking at possible treatments for certain major diseases such as cancer, AIDS. The current article in the present issue of Nexus is tooth decay, how to deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
We look into future science. Now that would be, I suppose one could describe it clearly as saying, well, cars that run on water.
Right.
Now those exist.
Of course.
The way in which energy can be generated in a way that is described as over unity, or to give it its more colloquial term, free energy.
Mm-hmm.
There are many people researching these areas, and this is something that Nexus readers like to keep up to date with, what is going on. And that is the great strength of the editor, that he can acquire the information from right around the world, whether it's from Russia or from America, from Sweden. We published articles from Sweden, from Europe, right across Australia, obviously, China we published articles from. So it's a worldwide magazine with information from right around the world.
Right.
We also obviously publish articles on UFOs when it's appropriate to do so,
Mm-hmm.
The paranormal, the unexplained. We also look at what we describe generally as hidden history,
Mm-hmm.
the sort of history which not everybody is familiar with, but a lot of research has been carried out saying that the history we believe or we are told happened isn't necessarily the only story that should be told about it.
Right.
Because as we know, history is written by the winners.
That's right.
And sometimes there are other stories which one can talk about. For instance, the British version of what happened during World War II is not the same as the Russian version of what happened in World War II.
That's right.
Or the German version of what happened in World War II. And so to get the complete picture enables people to make far more informed and important choices and decisions about how their life should be led and how their politicians should behave.
Now, the magazine that comes out in Australia, is that the same one that comes out up here or in Europe or England, or is there any kind of editorial difference between the magazines?
No, the magazine that is published in Australia is the same as the English language versions, which are published in both Europe and in America and in New Zealand.
Right.
There are also foreign language editions, which are published in France, in Italy, in Greece, in Croatia, in Russia, in Poland, in Romania, in Japan. So these ones are all published in those languages.
Right.
But what they do is to take the original articles from Nexus and translate them.
Right.
And then publish them in those languages. Now, those offices are run quite independently, as all Nexus offices are all independent. We just distribute the magazine.
I see.
So what you get in Australia is what you get in Britain. The only